Hi, I'm George Nordhaus, and welcome to Monday Morning, the Prospecting Suite. What in the world is all that about? Well, prospecting, as you probably know, and we all know, is not easy, ever. But it's even harder if you're not organized. And when I saw the prospecting suite, I said, oh my gosh, an agent needs to be organized like crazy. Al Diamond, who's the president of Agency Consulting Group, here he is. You probably will know him. They're very, very well known. He's been around for many years and consulted with a lot of agencies that I know about that worked with for over these many, many years. They have, Al and his crew there have a wonderful series of articles and uh, services is what I'm trying to say, excuse me. And people of all shapes and sizes, agents go there to them. I got involved with it, I think, early on. The pipeline. The pipeline, Al publishes that. The pipeline, as far as I'm concerned, is the top agency management newsletter that comes out. It's a monthly newsletter, and it's really, really good stuff. And it's so good, I pass it on. To our group of 100,000 who get the Monday Morning Market. I have passed it on to friends many times and recommended it, and I've never heard anything but praise. So if you want that, Al will show you how to get it later on before we quit. But Al, let's talk about prospecting. If anybody knows it, you do.
Well, thank you, George. Yes, prospecting is not a mystery, although it appears to be such to a lot of agencies because it's so hard to do. It's hard to get organized. It's always been a mystery to most agencies, and the agencies that we know have basically left it up to the producers to fend for themselves. I remember when I started, I got a phone book given to me and said, go out and prospect.
Gosh.
You remember a phone book? Those are the big yellow things that we used to
I
have.
used
Now
to
we use
remember
them.
them. Yeah, I haven't used one
Yeah,
for years, but I think I remember them, yeah.
we still use them. They're doorstops.
Oh, good line.
Anyway, most prospecting was left to the producers themselves. However, in every other industry that we've experienced, it's actually done by the host company, not by the individual salespeople. The salespeople are the recipient of the prospects, and they're told to go out and build relationships. So if prospecting is done properly, it gives the producers time to create relationships and to sell insurance. And by the way, that's what we hire them for. We don't hire them to bring in prospects. We hire them to sell insurance to the folks who are interested. So the unknowns in prospecting, we never know what size accounts are productive for producers. I think we've solved that problem in this product. We also don't know how many prospects a producer can handle because many producers have other responsibilities, hopefully most of them, to keeping relationships strong with pre-existing clients.
Mm-hmm.
We also don't know what the basis of goals should be for producers on an annual level with respect to prospecting. So we've developed that within the prospecting suite. And how does an agency know if a producer is doing a good job during the year? Do we wait till the end of the year and figure out how much premium or commission he sold? Or is there a way of monitoring that? And our contention is there's absolutely a way of monitoring that during the year, and it's called the prospecting suite. The prospecting suite is made up of several things. First of all, the prospecting calculator, then a PPT, which is called Producer Prospecting Time, and we'll explain each of these in just a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And the PRP, the Prospect Revenue Generator, what do you expect to get from the prospects that you generate? The prospecting calculator defines the minimum size prospect suitable for each person, and it may be different. The Producer Prospecting Time, the PPT, identifies the time that's available to producers, factoring in their other responsibilities. So we look at all of the things they have to do, and we determine how much of that on a regular basis can be devoted to prospecting. Then, by definition, the PRP, the revenue generator, actually calculates the annual agency revenue projected for a producer based on the prospecting activity to which he commits. Each one of these can act separately, but we put them together and we develop them together to help an agency define the proper prospecting for each producer. So let's start with the calculator itself.
All right.
The basis for producers identifying how many prospects and which prospects they should have truly is their compensation expectations. There's a whale of a lot of difference between a producer who expects to earn $30,000 a year and a producer who expects to earn $130,000 a year. We encompass in the prospecting calculator the length of the marketing program and the depth of the marketing program. And that implies that the agency develops marketing programs for producers. A marketing program is something that could be 1 year long, it could be 2 or 3 years long. As you know, George, we have a 15-step 3-year marketing program that's part of our relationship selling device called the asset protection model. But they don't have to use this for a 3-year program. It could be 1 or 2 years. But what we caution all agencies, and we teach them, is a marketing program is not a single letter to anyone. A program is a repetitive device, so there are a number of contacts made to each prospect every year, and the best marketing programs we've seen are multiple years. So you go to the same prospects over a 2 or 3 year period, you get to know them quite well. The fields in the prospect calculator can be filled in by the agency or the producer, or the fields are filled in by agency consulting group's validation tool. As you know, a part of our producer compensation program is producer validation, and what it does is it determines how many sales calls that producer has to make on a weekly basis in order to achieve his financial goals for the end of the year. And it includes renewals, it includes new business, it includes everything. And the prospect calculator, for those growing number of agents who are involved in the asset protection model, it fits right into the asset protection model of relationship selling. So it can be used independently of that for agents who want to do the traditional methods of sales, or it can fit into relationship selling as well. Well, here's what it looks like.
Excuse me, I was just going to say, you're taking all the fun. You're taking all the fun out of running an agency. This goes right down to the gut level.
Yeah, well, it isn't meant, running an agency is not meant to be sitting on the edge of your seat trying to figure out where your producers are every day.
Yeah.
Running an agency should be monitoring, a monitoring device for what the producers know they have to do. We're not hiring babies here, we're hiring grown-ups. And if a producer can't be trusted to go out and contact a lot of our prospects, then they shouldn't be a producer for the agency. They should be doing something else, either within the agency or outside.
Got it.
So here's the example. Here's what the premium calculator looks like. We look at a producer, an individual producer. We look at the gross commission he does within an agency and how much he was paid last year for production, not for other roles. And then we determine what his annual projection is, what he would like to make this year. In our example, a producer who earned $50,000 last year wants to make $60,000 this year. His average commission, when you consider new business and renewals, growth and base, whatever, however you want to do it, is around 20%. Some agencies pay a little more, some pay less. Few agencies are still paying 50% because they expend more than 50% of every dollar on operations. And if you're spending 55 cents on the dollar on operations, how can you give a producer 50%? You lose money on every deal.
For sure.
So out of that, we determine the number of personal visits each year that are expected to each prospect. This is something that's input. Everything that you see a block around is input. And how long we expect an average visit to take. This changes. This changes by agency and it changes by region. I was out west a few months ago, near where you are, George, and when I asked how many calls can a producer make, they said they're lucky if they can make 2 visits per day, because each visit is going to take between 3 and 4 hours when you consider the travel time involved.
Sure. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was a western state in a rural area.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long time. However, last week when I was in an agency that was in an urban area, we were talking about an average duration of a call of maybe an hour with 5 to 6 calls a day, quite possible if they cluster calls properly.
Huh.
The visits per year is determined by the agency. That's the agency or the producer's expectation of how many times a year he or she is going to see a prospect. So they can be twice a year or 3 times or more. And then the program years is the agency decision on how long it will market to a prospect before it says, okay, we've spent enough time on this prospect. If we haven't developed it into the stage where it's going to become a client, we need to settle back and not spend a lot of producer time.
Got it.
When we develop this, along with the average commission rate of a producer, if you don't have it for the producer, the average commission rate of the agency is used, we identify the premium size needed to be sold in prospects for this producer to either maintain his $50,000 a year level, which is $17,361 here, or if he wants to grow to $60,000, he needs to be selling $20,000, $21,000 account premiums. It's not a horrible thing, and it's easy to derive. Now, this gives you the target of what kind of prospects you have to go after. The next thing we do is called the producer prospecting time. Every producer out there, except brand new ones or the ones totally dedicated to production. By the way, in our producer compensation programs and the asset protection models, we dedicate producers, a lot of them, to pure sales. But that's not certainly in the majority. What we identify in the PPT is the weekly and annual prospecting time available to each producer considering his other duties, because it incorporates time needed by the producer to visit existing accounts. This is really important. If you don't visit your current accounts, you know what they are? They're prospects for my other clients because they're going to sneak in around you. If you spend a lot of time with them before you sell, and then don't spend any time with them after you sell, they're going to be available to someone else eventually. They'll forget you. So we do recommend and we teach agents how to visit existing clients, and we differentiate the visits by size or status. You have VIP clients that you want to see 4, 5, 6 times a year. You also have small clients, single policy accounts, things that that you're doing as a favor that you might never see at all, and we differentiate those. We can use the agency-defined prospecting and marketing, or we can use the step marketing program. That's the choice of the agency. So that's the producer prospecting time, and this is what it looks like. In the producer prospecting time, we look at the producer's activity. Our test producer has 225 commercial accounts. 75 of them are under $1,000 in commission, and that's what this producer and the agency defined as small accounts. Other producers, other agencies may define this differently, but it's user-defined. We also know from the history of the producer that he has 20 accounts. His top 20 are what he determines as VIP accounts. And what he requires and what the agency requires is that the top 20 accounts be seen at least 2 times a year. His intermediate accounts, according to him and the agency, will be seen once a year. And his small accounts, the ones under $1,000, he doesn't have to see. It's an on-demand. It doesn't mean he won't see them. It means that he sees them on demand when they require it, not on a schedule. So this right here defines 170 visits that he can't be out seeing prospects because he's out seeing clients. The average sales calls a day are defined by the agencies, by the producer's schedule. In this case, he's available 3 days a week, or he's available for 3 sales calls a day, and he's available 3 days a week. On a 50-week basis, that means that he can make 450 sales calls.
Wow.
That means that he's going to make 9 sales calls on average per week, which is not a horrendous amount. And since he's already seeing his top clients at least once a week to fulfill the requirement there, and he's seeing his intermediate clients, 3 of them each week, he has time to see either 6, 7, or 8 prospects every single week. This breaks down how many prospect calls he's going to make, and it's an easy monitoring device, and we do, of course, monitor this after the fact.
Now, it just seems like who keeps all these records? Is it the producer himself?
The producer himself keeps the records and gives it to either the sales manager or the agency owner.
Okay.
And we have a very modest form. There's only 3 or 4 cells that he has to fill in every week, and he does that because he's out. He knows how many sales calls he makes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the prospect revenue generator takes all the information from the last 2 and determines the prime number of prospects for a producer sales funnel. Now, it's important that the agency understand the concept of a sales funnel. As you know, George, a sales funnel means that you have to have a certain number of prospects in the mill at all times. You will lose some of those prospects in one of 2 ways. You will either sell insurance to them, they're no longer a prospect, they're now a client, or you will kill them, or they will kill themselves, and you'll understand that they're never going to be a client of yours, and we teach producers how to identify that. And as a result of that, you have a certain number of prospects. When you lose them, you have to replace them with new prospects. That's why you always need a prospect pool to go into your sales funnel. This projects the number of accounts that are expected to be written in each year of prospecting from that sales funnel, from the prospect number, your prime number that you created in the last spreadsheet. It projects both new business and renewal revenue expected, and that projection is based on the individual producer's historical success, and if he hasn't had any because he's relatively new, on the agency's historical success in generating new business and retaining renewals. Mm-hmm. And this is what the prospect revenue generator looks like. We're looking at something where you determine who you're going to see. Are you going to see all clients, VIP only, or VIP and intermediate? In this case, the producer is seeing his VIP and intermediate clients. Okay. We know that from the PPT grid that we did before that he can do 8.2 prospect calls, and we know that he has 50 weeks a year and he's required to do 4 sales calls per prospect per year. We know that from before. So his prime number in the case of this particular producer is 103. We need to give him 103 prospects that he will see 4 times a year, that he will do calls to on a regular basis, and his experience is down below. His closing rate in the first year of a prospect has been around 10%. Not particularly great, but that's not the point. In the second year of seeing the same pool of prospects, that grows to another 15% closing. And if he sees the same group of prospects 3 years in a row, by the third year he's closing another 20%. Based on the number of prospects he has in his pool, what we've determined is that over a 3-year program, marketing program, he's going to generate almost $194,000 of agency commission based on those 103 prospects. Now, if you have that kind of solid data in front of you as an agency owner, you can actually monitor on a weekly and monthly basis the activity of your producers, take corrective action when needed, and make sure that they always have in their pool of prospects those magic 103. For this producer, he needs that number. For others, it changes. And you can monitor the events going through the year. You can also project, if you do strategic planning, how much revenue in each year this producer is going to generate. So you have a means now of actually projecting the growth of your business through sales of producers based on prospecting.
This is the most analytical thing I've ever seen.
Well, it's meant It's not meant to be overwhelming, and it's meant to be done by the producers themselves. They're the ones who monitor these devices.
Yeah.
But most of the work is done ahead of the game when we determine how many sales calls they have to make on their clients, how many prospects they need, and schedule out for them how many calls every year they need to make to each prospect.
Wow.
So the results are shown at the bottom of the page. If this producer were to visit each of 103 prospects 4 times a year for 3 years, with the closing rates on prospects equal to what he's had in the past, for accounts that created around $21,000 in average premium and $2,500 in commission, 12%, he's going to generate $194,000 in gross commissions over a 3-year period. Now, if that isn't sufficient to help agents sponsor new producers, if you knew that your new producers were going to generate between $100,000 and $150,000 over a 3-year period, sure, it's worth the investment to bring them in. And we'd like more agents to hire more producers to get to these results.
Wow.
So that's how this thing works.
I never have seen anything like this. Honestly, I never knew it was so analytical. I'm getting scared. Of course, I think a lot of it is personality too, and the management person. That a lot of people can deal with this kind of thing where I might not be able to because I'm off the wall or something. It's not for everybody, is it?
No, it isn't. It's for active agents. It's for agents who are going to manage producers, because a marketing tool is not a marketing tool. For instance, I've given you 4 examples on this page of a hammer. That's a hammer for a watchmaker. That's a hammer for a carpenter. This one will break up concrete, and this one will do big jobs, but they're all hammers. But if you can't use them, it may as well be this. It's going to be as good to you as a rock. So any tool is only as good as the craftsman who uses it, and that brings to your point, George. This is not for casual users. These are for agency managers and sales managers, because if your producers are already out of the office marketing regularly, we do encounter those, the prospecting suite can be used independently to guide and maximize their time. However, if your producers spend most of the time in the office, they're answering phones, they're working on marketing, servicing, we can help you refocus those producers on what's important. What's important for a producer is selling insurance. The prospecting suite is a tool, and that's all it is. It's not going to make good producers out of, silk purses out of sow's ears. But if you have someone with promise and someone who can be molded, this can work. Unfortunately, if your producers are retired in place, RIP, we can recover some, we can repurpose others, then the prospecting tool can be used as a tool, but there are some that may not be recoverable at all, and you have to be aware of that. However, if you're in an agency that have been wishing for producers and you have none, this tool will only help you once you've hired people whose role in the agency is not to service customers, you have customer service reps for that, but whose role in the agency is the growth of the book of business.
I think that it is very, very important. Once you've got this and you're using it, I think it would be very vital in the hiring process. I think there's a whole lot of people who would not like this. I think there's a whole lot of people who would, as producers.
You will find producers who will not take the job in your agency if they know they're held accountable, and bless them for what they're doing for you, because otherwise you would pay them for 3, 4, 5 years before you realized that they were just spinning their wheels and taking your time.
I got it. Well, here's how you can get hold of you, Al, and I think this is fascinating to me. My silence is unusual because I never really understood this complexity, if I may use that word here, in the management of producers. But boy, oh boy, it takes away all the guesswork, doesn't it, for sure?
It's just like working any other tool. Once you learn how to use it, it becomes a wonderful aid to you. Well, and you don't have to drive nails with a rock.
Well, listen, if you guys want to, if you listeners want to talk to Al, you can do so anytime there, and he's very, very good about communicating, and I know that because we're partners in other other areas. And in the meantime, though, the pipeline is really, really worthwhile. And what does it cost, 40 or 50 to $60 a year, something. It's very, very minimal, and it's hardly anything, but it's every month. It's something that you will get. You'll see a bunch of great articles in there that go right to the heart, like we're talking here, and then you would, of course, pass that around to people in your agency. So, Al, is there any other thoughts you have before we quit?
No, I don't think so. We're certainly available to talk this over with any agency and just explore how this or any other of our services can help the agency grow and make more money. That's our goal in life.
Well, you certainly are succeeding in that. I know that, and I love to work with your people because they're so amenable and help me tremendously on so many things. So once again, go to Al Diamond, go to Agency Consulting Group. You're going to be so amazed at all of the wonderful intricacies of the management of the agencies that Al has developed over these many years, not the least of which is the compensation systems that he has. And well, I could go on and on, but I don't want to. So for the rest of you, I'll see you again. Thank you, Al, and I'll see the rest of you again next Monday morning.